Hello, everybody. My name is Hayden Norton. I'm a student at Sail University for the game development program, and I have been tasked with creating a new mechanic for a Sokoban style or tile based game. The mechanic that I looked into creating is a beam mechanic, or just like a laser. I got my inspiration from this by thinking. Originally, I got it from a board game that I played as a child, where you had mirrors on these triangular pyramid pieces that you could rotate and move around, and you had a laser pointer that you could shoot at them to reflect the beam. I originally wanted to make the beam reflective, but wasn't able to figure out the reflection mechanic. So right now I just have the regular base beam. So I'll go ahead and show the gameplay of it, and we're supposed to do this in standalone, so that's this one right here. So the beam right here has an emitter that comes over here, spawns in whatever direction that I select it. I'll show everything about that later. But it kills the player and restarts the level whenever the player comes in contact with the beam, and they can't walk onto the tile with the beam. However, I do have it to where the beam can be blocked with this block right here, but visually the beam is not it's not destroying itself, and I'm not quite sure. The beam is still active because I can still kill the player in either direction or in either these ones, except for the tile that the interactive box went over. And I'll show the additional. I have another beam over here set for a different direction. All right. So in order to do this, I ended up coming over here to the. First, I took a look at the BP tile event graph, and I was trying to figure out a method to get on entered to work, but uh, that ended up being a moot point, at least for the emission of beams. And instead, I ended up creating my own custom event. Over here, the first portion is for the initializing of the tiles and directions before starting the beam loop. So basically, the beam direction is set, and then the current tiles are selected, or for what it's being initialized on. The loop through up to beam range tiles in a straight line. This one is essentially just, it gives me my beam range is the tiles that are in between the emitter minus the one emitter tile. So that's what this -1 is for on the last index. For once you go into the body, getting ready to spawn, you'll take the previous tile, which is the current tile, previous tile, and set them both for their neighbors. This is for the visual alignment of the beam segment to connect between the two connected tiles. So once it gets the previous tile's actor location, it then takes that vector value and returns a location for a spawn transform, which I then spawn the beam entity actors, and I'll show the logic for that in a second. This sets the current entity on each tile that has a beam segment to be a beam segment. That's what this return value is connecting over here for. And then I have an is valid here loop because I was having issues with the tiles spawning beam segments every other tile. So without this is valid here, you're gonna have that bug to where it's only gonna spawn every other tile. I'm not quite sure as to why it's doing that. It may have something with the way that I have the spawn actor going through, possibly being spawned by vectors into its transform. I'm really not sure. I've troubleshot quite a bit for it. And then obviously at the end of the emit beam, we have the setup beam segment. That is a function that I made to be called over here in the beam entity. set up beam segment. Basically, this just takes the start location, end location, and adds it, and then divides it by 2. This is what sets the range for the beams. It sets what the distance is between the tiles for the beam segments. Down here, I have if the this is where if the player were to come in and touch the beam, I call most things like that death touch. Kill player if hit beam is the custom event that I created for that. And then I just, because this BP entity isn't being cast to the player, I came over here to the entity player and just kind of, yeah, I literally just copy pasted all of these, which is literally just the kill player nodes. So it's disabling the input, spawning the sound for the death, playing the audio, and then coming into a delay before the game mode is reset and you reload the level. That is pretty much it. You don't need to call any parent functions for this. Do make sure that you call it on the event begin play, because if you don't, then obviously the beam won't emit from the emitter. And in order to change the direction and everything, I'll show you that here in a second. Let me go ahead and replace I'll just do this one up here. Beam emitter, replace this one for a floor so it doesn't get too hectic. All right, so you have your beam directions that can go up, down, left, or right. I believe the orientation for this is up, right, down, left. Let me double check on that. Yep, up, right, down, left. All of those warnings were because there was no direction set for the beam. So we're gonna set it as going right, so towards the finish line. We're gonna set it to 1, 2, 3, and make sure always remember you don't include the emitter tile, because it's subtracting the beam segment, and then it'll go ahead and set those beams up for you. Now, visually, it does not look like the beam is centered. I'm not sure why. That's another error that or another bug that I need to figure out and fix, but it does all work. You can't push the box. You can push the box directly on the emitter, and you can walk on the emitter if you don't have the interval set to false. So make sure you have that set to false before pressing play or packaging up any details with it. If you wanted to change the direction of the beam, all you have to do is change the direction here. Make sure you hit save, and then the beam's now going down. If I wanted it to go left, now it's going left. If I wanted it to go up, now it's going up. And with the visual bug of it destroying, or of it coming over here, I assume that's within already within either BP entity or BP tile, with it replacing the entity once it goes over a tile. But I'm not sure how to get that worked into the BP tile beam emitter or the BP entity beam segment. I tried both of these, calling events. Event begin play, I tried having the beam segment detect whether the whether it was a collision with a player, but obviously collision isn't working. So there's something within the BP entity or BP tile that would address that. I'm assuming it has something to do with get neighbor or get all neighbors, or even replace tile and entity and replace entity. But I tried all of those and none of those were working. So that'll just have to be another test for another day. But thank you very much. I hope anybody who wants to utilize this has a good time trying to figure out the bugs that I couldn't, and also maybe you can find new ways to implement it into your game. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you into your game. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.